The echo of the choir died under the stained glass. The millionaire bride raised the microphone like a verdict. "In the name of honesty," she said to the packed pews, "our maid will make a confession." From the aisle, the maid stepped forward with two small children in her arms. But before she could say a word, the groom raised his hand, 5 fingers, took a step toward her and said 5 words that made the priest lower his book, the guests rise to their feet, and the bride's smile finally fall apart. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Does Miss Jessica know you brought those children here today? Martha Montgomery's voice cut through the air like ice as she stared at the 2 toddlers holding Diane's hands. Diane Johnson straightened her back. "My babysitter has the flu, Mrs. Montgomery. I had no choice." "There are always choices," Martha said, walking away in her designer dress. "Just keep them out of sight during the ceremony." Diane Johnson had woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning in her small apartment on the outskirts of Westfield, Connecticut. Her twins, Emma and Ethan, were still sleeping peacefully when her phone buzzed with a message. Her babysitter was sick with a fever. After 7 years working for the Montgomery family, Diane knew she couldn't call in sick today, not on Jessica Montgomery's wedding day. "Mommy, are we going to a party?" Emma asked, her small fingers gripping Diane's hand as they walked through the service entrance of St. Mary's Church. "Yes, sweetie, but we need to be very quiet. Mommy has to work today." Diane had dressed the twins in their best clothes, clean, if not expensive. At 2 years old, they were well behaved for their age, but still toddlers. She set them up in a small room near the kitchen with coloring books and snacks. "Miss Johnson, we need you to check the flower arrangements in the main hall," called one of the event coordinators. The church looked like something from a fairy tale. Thousands of white roses covered every surface. Crystal decorations caught the morning light streaming through stained glass windows. A red carpet ran down the center aisle. Is everything perfect? It has to be perfect. Jessica Montgomery appeared suddenly, still in her preparation robe, her blonde hair in large rollers. "Everything looks beautiful, Miss Montgomery," Diane said. Jessica looked at Diane as if just noticing her. "Why are you dressed like that?" "All staff should be in the black uniforms I selected." "I'm sorry, I have them here to change into," Diane said, holding up a garment bag. "I just arrived with my children." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Your children are here? At my wedding? My babysitter is sick. I don't care about your problems," Jessica snapped. "Just keep them hidden. If they make noise during my ceremony, you're fired. Understood?" "Yes, Miss Montgomery." Jessica walked away, barking orders at a florist who was adjusting an arrangement. Diane took a deep breath and headed back to check on the twins. On her way, she passed Robert Montgomery, the tech billionaire father of the bride, talking to a group of men in expensive suits. "Johnson," he called out, barely glancing at her. "Is my daughter satisfied with everything?" "She's checking final details now, sir." "Good. The governor just arrived. Make sure he gets seated in the front section." Robert Montgomery had barely looked at Diane during their entire exchange. After 7 years managing his household, she was still just Johnson to him, a useful tool, not a person. Diane quickly changed into her staff uniform and returned to the twins. She found her friend Sarah, another household staff member, entertaining them. "They're adorable," Sarah said. "Emma looks more like you every day." "Thank you for watching them," Diane said. "How's it going out there?" Sarah lowered her voice. "Jessica had a meltdown about the champagne temperature, and the groom just arrived. He looks like he might throw up." "Is he drunk?" Diane asked. "No, just looks trapped. His father keeps adjusting his tie and lecturing him about something." Diane nodded. She had seen that look on James Parker's face before. The heir to Parker Banking Group always seemed uncomfortable at Montgomery functions. Unlike the rest of the wealthy guests, James had always treated the staff with respect, even learning their names. "Mr. Parker, welcome." William Parker's voice boomed from the church entrance as he guided his son toward the altar. Today is the culmination of everything we've worked for. The Parker-Montgomery union will be the cornerstone of our legacy. James nodded silently, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Diane. For a brief moment, their gazes locked. His expression shifted. Something like pain crossed his face before he quickly looked away. "Diane, Robert wants you to check that all the place cards are correct," Sarah said, breaking the moment. The next hour passed in a blur of last-minute adjustments and wealthy guests arriving. Senators, CEOs, and even a movie star made their way into the church. Diane worked efficiently, invisible to the guests, but essential to the event's success. Just before the ceremony began, Diane slipped back to check on Emma and Ethan. "Mommy, I'm bored," Ethan said, his coloring book abandoned. "Just a little longer, sweetheart. Then we can go home." "Is that man coming to our house again?" Emma asked innocently. Diane felt her heart skip. "What man, sweetie?" "The man who reads us stories. The one in the picture." Diane quickly put her finger to her lips. "Remember our special secret? We don't talk about our private things when Mommy is working." The music swelled, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. Diane knew she needed to be in position to handle any last-minute issues. "I need you both to stay here with Miss Sarah. Be good, and we'll get ice cream after." As the ceremony began, Diane stood in the back of the church, close enough to the service room to hear if the twins needed her. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their pale pink dresses, followed by the flower girl sprinkling white rose petals. The music changed. Everyone stood. Jessica appeared at the church entrance on her father's arm, wearing a $200,000 designer dress that sparkled with every movement. Her smile was perfect, practiced but empty. Robert Montgomery beamed with pride as he walked his daughter down the aisle. At the altar, James stood with perfect posture, his face a careful mask. When Jessica reached him, he took her hand mechanically. The Reverend welcomed everyone and began the ceremony. "We are gathered here today to join Jessica Montgomery and James Parker in holy matrimony." Diane felt a tug on her dress. She looked down to see Emma and Ethan had escaped from Sarah. "Mommy, we're hungry," Ethan whispered. Diane's heart raced as she knelt down. "You need to go back with Sarah. This is important." Before she could usher them away, the ceremony reached the exchange of vows. But instead of responding to the Reverend, Jessica raised her hand. "Before we continue," Jessica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I'd like to ask for the microphone." The Reverend looked confused but handed it to her. A murmur ran through the guests. "I want to invite someone special to come forward," Jessica continued, her voice echoing through the church. "Diane Johnson, would you please join us at the altar?" Every head in the church turned. Diane froze, her twins clutching her hands. "Diane has something very important to share with everyone here today," Jessica said, her voice honeyed but her eyes cold. "Especially with my fiancé." James's face drained of color. Diane couldn't move. "Come now, don't be shy," Jessica continued. "Tell everyone about those beautiful children you're holding, Diane." The church fell silent. Jessica's smile turned sharp as a knife. "Tell them who their father really is." Everyone in the church stared at Diane. Her hands trembled as she held onto Emma and Ethan. The twins looked up at her, confused by the sudden attention. I don't understand," Diane said, her voice barely audible in the silent church. Jessica's smile remained fixed as she pointed at James. "Tell everyone that my fiancé is their father. Tell them about your secret affair." Gasps rippled through the crowd. James stepped away from the altar, his face pale. "Jessica, stop this," he said. "Not like this." Robert Montgomery rose from his seat in the front row. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice boomed through the church. "Daddy, I wanted to give you the perfect wedding," Jessica said, turning to face her father. But I discovered something 3 months ago that changed everything. Jessica reached into a hidden pocket in her wedding dress and pulled out several photographs. She held them up for everyone to see. I hired a private investigator, she announced. He followed James for weeks. Look at these pictures. James visiting Diane's apartment late at night. James playing with these children in the park. William Parker stood up now, his face red with anger. James, is this true? The church erupted in whispers. Martha Montgomery covered her mouth in horror while looking at Diane with disgust. Jessica turned to James, her voice cold. I gave you a chance last night to end things with her. I told you we could still make this work if you cut her off completely, but you refused. And Diane tried to back away, pulling the twins toward the exit. I should go, she whispered. Stay right there, Robert Montgomery shouted, pointing at Diane. You've worked in my home for 7 years. All this time you were sneaking around with my daughter's fiancé? The twins began to cry, frightened by the shouting. Diane knelt down to comfort them. Don't cry, sweethearts, she whispered. Everything will be okay. James walked down from the altar. His steps were slow but determined. He approached Diane and the twins, then turned to face the crowd. Yes, he said clearly, Emma and Ethan are my children. The church fell completely silent again. I've loved them since before they were born, James continued, and I've loved their mother for 3 years. Jessica threw the microphone to the ground. How dare you say that here, at our wedding? I was going to go through with this wedding because of family obligations, James said, looking at his father. But I can't build a life on lies anymore. Jessica lunged toward James. You can't do this to me. Do you know how this will look? What people will say? Martha Montgomery rushed forward to grab her daughter's arm. Jessica, control yourself. People are watching. Robert Montgomery pointed at Diane. You're fired. Pack your things and be out of my house by tonight. You gold-digging home wrecker, Martha hissed at Diane. You planned this from the start, didn't you? Diane shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, I never wanted this to happen. William Parker walked slowly toward the front of the church. Everyone grew quiet, expecting him to denounce his son. Instead, he stopped in front of Emma and Ethan. The twins stared up at the tall man with wide eyes. William knelt down to their level. Hello, he said softly. He reached out and gently touched Emma's cheek. You have your father's eyes. James looked at his father in shock. Dad? William stood up, his expression unreadable. You should have told me, James. Why didn't you tell me about my grandchildren? I was afraid, James admitted. I made a promise to you when you were in the hospital. You asked me to fulfill my duty to the family business. William shook his head. I released you from that promise months ago. After my heart attack, I realized what really matters in life. It's not business deals or social standing. The wedding guests began to leave the church in groups, whispering among themselves. Several pulled out their phones, taking pictures and making calls. The reporters outside are going to have a field day with this, Martha said, looking panic-stricken. Jessica, we need to leave through the back entrance. Jessica stood frozen, staring at James with the twins. This was supposed to be my perfect day, she whispered. You've ruined everything. Robert approached William. This isn't over, Parker. Your son has humiliated my daughter in front of everyone who matters in Westfield. There will be consequences. William faced Robert calmly. Threatening my family would be unwise, Robert. Outside the church, cars began leaving quickly. Through the stained glass windows, Diane could see camera flashes as reporters gathered. We need to go, Diane said to James. The twins are scared. James nodded and turned to his father. Can you help us leave without facing those reporters? Of course, William said. There's a side door through the vestry. My driver is waiting around the corner. As they prepared to leave, Jessica's voice rang out again. Where are you going? You can't just walk away from this. James took Diane's hand firmly in his. With his other hand, he picked up Ethan while Diane held Emma. Together, they formed a protective circle around their children. "It's over, Jessica," James said quietly. "I'm sorry for the pain I've caused, but I'm not sorry for choosing my real family." Jessica's face crumpled. "Real family? We were supposed to be your real family. The Montgomerys and Parkers united. That was the plan." "Some plans aren't meant to be," James replied. William led them through the side door of the church while the Montgomerys dealt with the chaos inside. Once outside, they hurried to William's waiting car. "Take them to Miss Johnson's apartment," William instructed his driver. "Make sure no one follows you." As the car pulled away, Diane looked back at the church. Reporters were swarming the main entrance as guests streamed out. "What happens now?" Diane asked quietly as Emma fell asleep in her arms. James squeezed her hand. "I don't know exactly, but we'll face it together." "I'm sorry," Diane said. "I never wanted to cause this kind of scene. When my babysitter called in sick this morning, I had no choice but to bring the twins. Jessica planned this," James said. "She wanted to humiliate you publicly. She knew exactly what she was doing." "How did she find out about us?" James sighed. "She confronted me last night. She had photos, evidence of my visits to your apartment. She said she'd been suspicious for months and hired someone to follow me." The car turned onto Diane's street. The modest apartment building looked peaceful, unaware of the storm that had just been unleashed. "The Montgomerys won't let this go easily," Diane said, fear in her voice. "Robert has connections everywhere." "So does my father," James replied, "and he seems to be on our side." They carried the sleeping twins into the apartment. It was small but neat, with children's toys carefully organized in colorful bins. Photos of the twins lined the walls. "This is the first time you've been here when they're asleep," Diane said, looking at James. "Usually you have to leave before bedtime." James nodded, a pained expression crossing his face. "No more sneaking around. No more lies." He walked to the window and looked out at the street. "There will be reporters here soon. They'll figure out where you live." "What should we do?" Diane asked, laying Emma gently on her bed. "We need to talk," James said, "about everything, our past, our present, our future. But first, let me call my father. We're going to need help navigating what comes next." As James made the call, Diane stood in the doorway watching her sleeping children. For 3 years, she had kept them a secret from the world. Now everything was exposed, for better or worse. Outside, a car pulled up. Diane tensed as she saw a familiar face through the window, her sister Linda looking worried as she hurried toward the building. "James," Diane called softly, "my sister is here." She must have seen the news already. James ended his call. "My father is coming over. He wants to help us make a plan." "A plan for what?" "For fighting back," James said with determination. "The Montgomerys just declared war on our family. We need to be ready." Linda rushed into the apartment, her eyes wide with worry. She hugged Diane tightly. "I saw everything on social media," Linda said. "Videos of the wedding are all over the internet. Are you okay?" "We're managing," Diane replied, closing the door quickly behind her sister. "The twins are asleep right now." Linda looked at James, standing in the small living room. "So you're finally out in the open." James nodded. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "I've known for a long time," Linda said. "Diane tells me everything. I just never thought it would become so public." A knock at the door made them all freeze. "Is that reporters already?" Linda whispered. Diane looked through the peephole. "It's William Parker." She opened the door to let James's father in. William entered the apartment, looking around at the modest space. His expensive suit seemed out of place among the children's toys and simple furniture. "The media is already gathering outside the building," William said. "We don't have much time before this place is surrounded." "What are people saying?" James asked. William sighed. The wedding disaster of Westfield is trending online. Everyone is talking about it. In the bedroom, Emma began to cry. Diane hurried to comfort her daughter. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, picking up the little girl. "Mommy's here." Emma looked over Diane's shoulder and saw William. She buried her face in her mother's neck. William approached them slowly. "May I?" he asked, reaching out tentatively. Diane nodded, and William gently touched Emma's hand. "Hello, Emma," he said softly. "I'm your grandfather." Emma peeked at him with curious eyes. "Grandpa?" "That's right," William smiled, "and I'm very happy to meet you." In the living room, James checked his phone. 12 missed calls from the office. And look at these news alerts. He showed his phone to Linda. The headline read, "Wedding Disaster of Westfield. Banking Heir Leaves Billionaire's Daughter at Altar for Household Manager." Linda shook her head. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery estate, Jessica threw another vase against the wall of her bedroom. Shards of glass littered the floor. "Jessica, stop this immediately!" Martha shouted from the doorway. "Breaking things won't solve anything." "He humiliated me!" Jessica screamed. "In front of everyone!" "For that servant!" Robert entered the room, his face dark with anger. "I've already made calls. James Parker will regret this day for the rest of his life." "What are you going to do?" Jessica asked. "First, I'm calling every business associate the Parkers have. By tomorrow, their banking group will start losing clients. No one humiliates our family without consequences." Martha nodded in agreement. "I've already spoken to our friends on the hospital board." "That woman will never find work in Westfield again." Jessica wiped away angry tears. "I want to leave. I can't face anyone here." "Paris," Robert said decisively. "You'll stay at our apartment there until this dies down. The press will forget eventually." Jessica nodded, already reaching for her phone. "I'll book a flight for tomorrow." Back at Diane's apartment, Ethan had woken up and was now sitting on William's lap, showing him his favorite toy car. "Vroom!" Ethan said, driving the car along William's arm. William laughed. He has James's energy. James watched his father interact with his son, a mix of emotions on his face. "Dad, I need to ask you something. Are you really okay with all this? With Diane? With the twins?" William looked up seriously. "Son, when I had that heart attack 2 years ago, I thought I was going to die. My last thought wasn't about the business or our family name. It was regret for pushing you into a life you never wanted." He set Ethan down gently and stood up. "I've made many mistakes. One of them was judging people by their bank accounts instead of their character." William turned to Diane. "I owe you an apology, Diane. I prejudged you without knowing you. I assumed the worst when James first mentioned your name." "Thank you," Diane said simply. "Now, we need to be practical," William continued. "You can't stay here. The reporters will make your life impossible, and the Montgomerys will use their influence against you both." "What do you suggest?" James asked. "I have a country house in Madison about an hour from here. It's private, gated, and would give you all time to figure out your next steps. You should stay there until the media attention dies down." Linda looked concerned. "What about Diane's job? Her life here?" James laughed without humor. "She was fired rather publicly at the church, remember?" Diane sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. "I need to find new work soon. I have savings, but not enough to support the twins for long." "Don't worry about money," James said immediately. "You may have less than you think," William interrupted. "Robert Montgomery is vindictive. He'll pressure your clients to leave Parker Banking Group. Your position there may be at risk as well." James ran his hands through his hair. "I need to go to the office tomorrow. Clean out my desk, at least." After William left, promising to send a car for them in the morning, James and Diane sat at her small kitchen table. The twins were asleep again, and Linda had gone to pack some of her own clothes for Diane. "So this is where you've been living," James said, looking around the small apartment. I've only seen it at night, with quick visits. It's not much, Diane admitted, but it's been home for us. It's warm, comfortable. James picked up a crayon drawing on the refrigerator. Did Emma draw this? Yes. She says it's you, me, and the twins at the beach, even though we've never been to a beach together as a family. James was quiet for a moment. I've missed so much. You've been here as much as you could, Diane said. The children know you love them. But I've been living a double life, showing up for dinner, reading bedtime stories, then disappearing back to my other world. Diane reached for his hand across the table. What happens now, James? Really? I don't know, he admitted. I've never not had a plan before. My whole life has been mapped out by my family until now. Are you sorry about what happened today? James looked at her directly. I'm sorry about how it happened. I'm sorry for the public scene. But I'm not sorry that everyone knows the truth now. I'm not sorry that I can finally acknowledge my children. They talked late into the night, making plans and discussing fears. Around 4 a.m, they began packing essential belongings. Diane moved quietly around the twins' room, selecting favorite toys and books. We should leave before dawn, James said, checking out the window. There are already 2 news vans parked outside. As they loaded the last bags into James's car, Diane paused to look up at her apartment window. The place she had worked so hard to make a home for her children. The only real home Emma and Ethan had ever known. Will we ever come back here? She wondered aloud. I don't know, James said honestly, but wherever we go next, we'll be together. That's what matters. The sky was still dark as they carefully placed the sleeping twins in their car seats. Linda hugged Diane goodbye, promising to visit them at the country house soon. Be careful, Linda warned. The Montgomerys aren't going to let this go easily. As James started the car, his phone buzzed with a text message from his father. Robert Montgomery is on the move. He's already contacted 3 of our biggest clients. Be prepared. James showed the message to Diane. We knew this was coming, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. We'll face it together, James replied, squeezing her hand as they drove away from the life they had known toward an uncertain future. The drive to Madison took nearly 2 hours. The twins woke up as the sun rose, curious about the journey. Where are we going? Ethan asked, rubbing his eyes. We're going to Grandpa William's house for a while, James explained, looking at the children through the rearview mirror. A vacation? Emma asked excitedly. Diane turned to smile at her daughter. Something like that, sweetie. The car turned onto a private road with tall trees on both sides. After passing through a large iron gate, a massive house appeared before them. The stone mansion sat on a hill overlooking a lake surrounded by perfectly maintained gardens. Wow! Ethan pressed his face against the window. Is that a castle? James laughed nervously. It's just a house. A big house. Diane said nothing, taking in the scale of William's country house. Her entire apartment could fit in the entrance hall alone. William greeted them at the front door, dressed casually in clothes that still looked expensive. Welcome! Come in, come in! The twins ran ahead, amazed by the grand staircase and high ceilings. Look, Mommy! This room is bigger than our whole house! Emma shouted, her voice echoing. William smiled proudly. Let me show you around. The swimming pool is out back, and there's a playroom upstairs just for the children. A uniformed maid approached Diane. I'll take your bags, ma'am. Which rooms would you like them in? I'm not sure, Diane stammered, looking at James. The East Wing, please, Margaret, William answered for her. The master suite for James and Diane, and the connected children's rooms for the twins. The maid nodded and took their bags. Diane watched as her worn suitcase was carried up the marble staircase. This place is too much, she whispered to James. We don't need all this. It's just temporary, James assured her, until we figure things out. After the tour, William led them to a large dining room where breakfast was waiting. The twins stared at the spread of food on the long table. I wasn't sure what the children like, so I had the chef prepare a variety, William explained. Chef? Diane asked. You didn't need to go to so much trouble. William waved his hand dismissively. No trouble at all. I've also taken the liberty of contacting an excellent nanny agency. They can send someone tomorrow to help with the children. That's not necessary, Diane said quickly. I take care of my own children. But surely you'd like some time to yourself, William insisted. The nanny could watch them while you enjoy the spa or go shopping. James noticed Diane's discomfort and changed the subject. Dad, I need to check my emails. The office will be in chaos today. William's expression grew serious. Use my study. We should talk business after you've settled in. Later that morning, James sat in William's study staring at his laptop screen in disbelief. 3 major clients have already pulled their accounts, he told his father. That's over $50 million walking out the door in one day. William nodded grimly. Robert's been busy. He called an emergency meeting of the Westfield Business Association last night. I'm hearing he told everyone that supporting Parker banking would be seen as condoning moral corruption. James's phone rang again, the 5th call from the office that hour. James Parker speaking, he answered. After listening for a moment, his face fell. I understand. Yes, these are unusual circumstances. I appreciate your years of business with us. He hung up and looked at his father. Another one gone. The Henderson account. Outside by the pool, Diane watched the twins splash in the shallow end. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the garden was filled with colorful flowers. It was beautiful, but Diane felt like a visitor in a museum. A gardener tipped his hat as he passed. Beautiful children, ma'am. Thank you, Diane replied, unused to being addressed as ma'am by staff. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Tech billionaire Robert Montgomery speaks out about wedding scandal. She clicked on the link to find Robert Montgomery standing outside his company headquarters, speaking to reporters. My family has been deeply hurt by the morally corrupt actions of James Parker, Robert said, his voice cold. He betrayed not only my daughter but the trust between our families. Actions have consequences, and Mr. Parker will face those consequences in both personal and professional realms. Diane closed the video, feeling sick. Her phone buzzed again with a text from her sister Linda. Are you seeing the news? Jessica just landed in Paris and gave an exclusive interview to E! News. Inside the house, James was still in the study with his father when his assistant called. Mr. Parker, I'm sorry to bother you, but everyone here is asking what's happening. The office is chaos. I'll come in tomorrow to clean out my desk, James said, rubbing his forehead. I don't think my position is tenable anymore. The board is meeting at 3 o'clock, his assistant added. I think they're voting on your future with the company. After hanging up, James checked his bank accounts on his laptop. His salary had been substantial and his investments were diverse, but the numbers were still smaller than he expected. I need to think about our financial situation, he told his father. If I lose my position, we'll need to budget carefully. William looked surprised. Son, you have your trust fund, which is tied to my position in the company, remember? The terms were clear. If I'm removed from the board, the fund goes into lockdown until I'm reinstated. That evening, Diane put the twins to bed in their new rooms. The children were exhausted from exploring the grounds and swimming. Is this our house now? Ethan asked as Diane tucked him in. No, sweetheart. We're just staying here for a while. I like it here, Emma said sleepily. It's like the princess books you read us. After the children fell asleep, Diane went downstairs to find James. He was in the kitchen making himself a sandwich. The chef offered to cook, but I sent him home, James explained. I thought we could use some privacy. Have you seen the news? Diane asked. Robert Montgomery is attacking you publicly. James nodded. And Jessica gave an interview claiming she's the victim in all this. It's gone viral online. This is all because of me, Diane said, her voice small. I've destroyed your life. No, James said firmly. We made decisions together. Besides, my life needed disrupting. I was living a lie. But your job, your reputation, I'll find new work. Start fresh. James took a deep breath. Actually, I've been looking at houses online. There's one for sale near Chester. It's not too far from here, but far enough from Westfield to give us privacy. Diane looked up in surprise. You're already looking at houses? We need our own place, James said. Somewhere that belongs to us, not my father. But what about my input? Diane asked, her voice rising slightly. Shouldn't we discuss this together? I thought you'd be happy. It's a beautiful house with a yard for the kids. That's not the point, James. You're making major decisions without even asking me. William entered the kitchen, interrupting their conversation. Everything okay in here? Fine, Dad, James said quickly. I was thinking, William continued, the twins would benefit from attending Brightwood Academy. It's the best preschool in the area. I'm friends with the director. They're only 2 years old, Diane said, trying to keep her voice even. They don't need an expensive preschool. The early years are crucial for development, William insisted. At Brightwood, they'd learn French and music theory. Dad, we haven't decided where we're living yet, James interrupted. I assumed you'd stay in the area, William said, surprised. The twins should grow up with their grandfather nearby. Diane felt overwhelmed. Everything was moving too fast. Excuse me, she said, leaving the kitchen abruptly. She walked outside to the terrace, needing fresh air. The night was quiet except for the sound of crickets. The moon reflected on the lake below. James followed her outside. Diane, what's wrong? Everything, she said, turning to face him. We've been together for 3 years, but we've never actually lived together. You don't know what it's like to be a full-time parent, and now you're making decisions about our future without me. I'm trying to take care of you and the kids, James said defensively. I don't need you to take care of me, Diane replied. I need you to respect me as an equal partner. Of course I respect you. Then why are you house hunting without me? Why are you letting your father plan our children's education? James sighed. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm used to fixing problems quickly, making decisions. Our life together isn't a problem to fix, James. It's something we build together. As they stood in tense silence, James's phone buzzed. He checked it and his face darkened. What is it? Diane asked. Robert Montgomery just discovered our location. He's posting about it online. How did he find us? Diane asked, her voice shaking. James stared at his phone. Someone at my father's house must have told him. He's even posted pictures of the property. They hurried back inside to find William already on the phone, his face red with anger. I don't care what he offered you, Margaret, William said to the person on the other end. You're fired. Clear out your things tonight. He hung up and turned to James and Diane. The maid. Robert Montgomery paid her for information. What do we do now? Diane asked. Nothing tonight, William said. The gates are locked and security is patrolling the grounds. You're safe here. The next morning, James found an envelope on the kitchen table addressed to him. Inside were legal documents, a lawsuit from the Montgomery family. They're suing me, James said in disbelief as Diane entered the kitchen. For breach of promise and emotional damage to Jessica. Diane picked up the papers. Can they do that? They can try, William said, walking in with his phone in hand. I've called an emergency meeting with our legal team. They'll be here in an hour. While William spoke with the lawyers in his study, Diane took the twins outside to play. The day was sunny, but she couldn't enjoy it, constantly scanning the property line for intruders. Mommy, why do you keep looking at the trees? Emma asked, as she drew with chalk on the patio. Just making sure we're safe, sweetheart, Diane answered. James joined them after the meeting, looking stressed. What did the lawyers say? Diane asked quietly so the twins wouldn't hear. They think we can fight it, but it will be expensive and public. The Montgomerys will drag us through the mud. Could we just settle? Pay them something to make this go away? James shook his head. That would be admitting wrongdoing. Besides, Robert doesn't want our money. He wants revenge. Inside the house, William was preparing to leave. "Where are you going, Dad?" James asked. "To speak with Robert directly," William replied, straightening his tie. "This has gone too far." "He won't listen to you," James warned. "Perhaps not, but I have to try." 2 hours later, William returned looking defeated. He poured himself a drink before speaking. "Robert refused to see me," he told them. "His security chief delivered a message. The Parkers will pay for this humiliation. This is never going to end, is it?" Diane said. William didn't answer. None of them had a solution. That afternoon, while the twins were napping, Diane heard a strange sound outside. Looking through the window, she saw a man with a camera climbing over the garden wall. "James!" she called urgently. "Someone's in the garden!" James ran outside and confronted the photographer, who was already taking pictures of the property. "This is private property!" James shouted. "Get out now!" The photographer continued snapping photos. "The public has a right to know about the Parker love nest. How's it feel to trade a billionaire's daughter for your nanny, Mr. Parker?" James lunged forward, grabbing the camera. "Those are my children in there! How dare you!" Diane had never seen James so angry. His face was red, his hands shaking as he held the photographer by his shirt collar. "James, stop!" she called, running outside. "He's not worth it." The twins appeared at the door, awakened by the shouting. The photographer spotted them and quickly took more photos before James could stop him. "Got what I needed," the man said with a smirk. "These will sell nicely." William called security, who escorted the photographer off the property. Diane called the police, but they seemed unimpressed by the complaint. "We'll file a report, Mrs. Parker," the officer said. "It's Miss Johnson," Diane corrected him. "And those pictures of our children will be everywhere tomorrow." "Not much we can do about that, ma'am. He was on private property, but the photos are already taken." After the police left, James sat at his laptop researching something intensely. "What are you doing?" Diane asked. "Looking at houses," James replied without looking up. "Not here. In Europe. Maybe Switzerland or Portugal." "Europe? You want to leave the country?" "We need to get away from all this," James said. "Somewhere the press doesn't care about American banking families." Diane stared at him in disbelief. "You want to run away?" "I want to protect my family," James snapped. "Every day we stay here, the Montgomerys attack us. The press harasses us. This isn't the life I want for our children." "So your solution is to uproot us completely? What about my sister, my job prospects, the twins' stability?" "What stability? We're living in my father's house, hiding from reporters." Their argument was interrupted by Diane's phone ringing. It was her sister, Linda. "I saw the news," Linda said. "Are you okay?" "Those photos of the twins are all over social media. We're fine," Diane said, turning away from James. "Just dealing with the fallout." "Listen," Linda said, "I've been thinking. Maybe you should come stay with me in Boston for a while. Get away from the Parker-Montgomery drama. My apartment isn't fancy, but it's safe." "I'll think about it," Diane said, glancing at James, who was still focused on European houses. After dinner, the tension between them continued to build. William tried to mediate, but his suggestions only made things worse. "I think a fresh start abroad is wise," William said. "I can help financially until James establishes himself somewhere new." "That's not the point," Diane argued. "We shouldn't have to run away. And decisions about our future need to be made together." Later that night, after William went to bed, James and Diane had their biggest argument yet. "You don't understand what we're facing," James said. "Robert Montgomery can destroy any chance I have of working in finance again. He's already calling all my contacts. And my solution is to stay and fight," Diane countered. "Show the world we have nothing to be ashamed of." "That's naive. The world doesn't work that way. Powerful men like Robert Montgomery win these battles." "So we just surrender? Give up our lives here?" "We build new lives somewhere else." Diane shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I can't do this anymore. You're still making decisions without me. Still treating me like I don't understand how the world works because I don't have your money or connections." She walked away and went upstairs to the twins' rooms. For nearly an hour, she sat watching them sleep, thinking about what to do. Finally, she made a decision. She quietly packed a small bag with clothes for herself and the twins. She wrote a note to James explaining that she needed space to think and that she would be staying with Linda for a while. It was almost midnight when she finished packing. She went to wake the twins, starting with Emma. As soon as she touched Emma's forehead, Diane gasped. The child was burning with fever. "Emma, sweetheart," Diane said, gently shaking her daughter. "Wake up, baby." Emma's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Mommy, I don't feel good." Diane called for James, all thoughts of leaving forgotten. "She's burning up," Diane said as James rushed into the room. "We need to take her to a hospital." James immediately went into action, waking William and asking for directions to the nearest emergency room. Within minutes, they were in the car, Emma wrapped in a blanket on Diane's lap. "Will she be okay?" Ethan asked, scared to see his twin sister so sick. "She'll be fine," James assured him, driving fast but carefully. "The doctors will help her." At the hospital, the emergency room was nearly empty at 1 in the morning. A nurse took Emma's temperature, 104 degrees. "The doctor will see her right away," the nurse said, leading them to an examination room. While they waited for the doctor, Diane held Emma's hand while James paced the small room. Their argument seemed trivial now. "I'm sorry," James said suddenly. "You're right. I've been making decisions without consulting you. I've been trying to control everything. And I've been scared," Diane admitted. "Not just of the Montgomerys, but of fitting into your world. Of not being enough." "You've always been enough," James said, sitting beside her. "More than enough. I'm the one who's been failing, trying to solve problems with money instead of facing them directly." Emma whimpered in her sleep, and both parents immediately focused on her. "It doesn't matter where we live," James said softly. "Switzerland, Connecticut, or your sister's apartment in Boston. What matters is that we're together, that we face things as partners." Diane nodded. "No more running. No more hiding. Whatever Robert Montgomery throws at us, we'll handle it together." The doctor entered the room with a chart in hand. James and Diane held hands tightly as they waited to hear about their daughter's condition. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker?" the doctor began. "It's Mr. Parker and Ms. Johnson," Diane corrected gently. The doctor nodded. "Your daughter has a severe ear infection. With antibiotics, she should recover quickly, but we'd like to keep her overnight to monitor her fever." Relief washed over them. As the doctor left to arrange Emma's admission, James squeezed Diane's hand. "I love you," he said simply. "Whatever happens with the Montgomerys, the lawsuit, my career, none of it matters compared to you and our children." Diane leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but no longer feeling alone. "We'll figure it out. Together." Emma stayed in the hospital for 2 days. The doctors gave her antibiotics through an IV, and slowly her fever went down. Diane barely left her daughter's side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to Emma's bed. James took care of Ethan, bringing him to visit his sister during the day. "When can Emma come home?" Ethan asked on the second morning, sitting carefully on the edge of his sister's hospital bed. "Today, if her fever stays down," James told him. "The medicine is working." The doctor confirmed this when he came to check on Emma later that morning. "She's responding well to the antibiotics. You can take her home today, but she'll need to continue taking medicine for 10 more days." As they prepared to leave the hospital, a nurse handed James some papers. "Just need your insurance information, Mr. Parker." James filled out the forms while Diane helped Emma get dressed. When the nurse returned, she looked at the paperwork with a frown. "There seems to be an issue with your insurance, Mr. Parker. It's showing as inactive." James stared at her in confusion. "That's not possible. I have coverage through Parker Banking Group. The system shows it was terminated yesterday." William, who had just arrived to drive them home, overheard the conversation. "I'll handle this," he said, pulling out his credit card. "We'll sort out the insurance later." On the drive back to William's house, James made several angry phone calls. "They can't just cancel my insurance," he told Diane after hanging up, "but apparently the board voted to remove me from my position yesterday. My benefits ended immediately." "Robert Montgomery's doing," William said grimly. "He's on the hospital board too." Back at the house, they settled Emma in her bed with her favorite stuffed animals. She was still weak, but much better. "I'm going to stay with Emma," Diane said. "You should talk with your father about what happened." In William's study, James paced back and forth. "They can attack me all they want, but going after my children's health care is crossing a line." William nodded. "This can't continue. We need to make some changes." The next morning, Emma felt well enough to come downstairs for breakfast. The whole family gathered in the kitchen, trying to create a sense of normalcy. "I've been thinking," James said, pouring coffee for Diane. "We need our own place. Not your mansion, Dad, and not a house in Europe. Just a normal home where we can build our life together." Diane looked relieved. "I agree. Somewhere not too far from here, but away from Westfield." "I saw some houses listed in Millfield," James suggested. "It's about 30 miles from here. Small town, good schools." "I could look for teaching jobs there," Diane said thoughtfully. "I have my education degree. I always wanted to teach kindergarten before I started working for the Montgomerys." James reached for her hand across the table. "You never told me that." "There's a lot we still need to learn about each other," Diane said with a small smile. After breakfast, James called his old Harvard classmate, Marcus Chen. They talked for nearly an hour while Diane played quietly with the twins in the living room. "Great news," James said when he hung up. "Marcus is interested in starting a financial advisory firm with me, focusing on helping working-class families build security and save for the future." "That sounds perfect for you," Diane said. "You always talked about wanting your work to have real meaning. We could set up an office in Millfield if we move there. Property is cheaper than in Westfield." William walked in carrying an envelope. "I want to give you this," he said, handing it to James. Inside was a check for a large amount of money. Diane gasped when she saw the number. "Dad, we can't accept this," James said immediately. "It's not a gift," William clarified. "Consider it an advance on the twins' college fund. Their grandfather should contribute to their future." James and Diane exchanged looks. After a moment, Diane nodded slightly. "Thank you," James said, accepting the check. "This will help us get started." Later that afternoon, William's housekeeper announced they had a visitor. "Who is it?" William asked, immediately concerned about security. "She says she's Mrs. Eleanor Parker." James looked stunned. "Mom? Here?" A slender woman with silver-streaked dark hair entered the living room. She looked around nervously until her eyes landed on James. "Hello, James," she said softly. "Mom? What are you doing here?" James hadn't seen his mother in over a year. After divorcing William, Eleanor had moved to Vermont, rarely returning to Connecticut. "I saw the news," Eleanor explained. "The wedding, the children. I had to come." Her eyes moved to the twins playing on the carpet. "Are these my grandchildren?" James nodded. "Emma and Ethan. And this is Diane." Eleanor approached Diane and took her hands. "I'm so sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I'm very happy to know you." "Thank you for coming," Diane said, surprised by the warm welcome. Eleanor knelt down to greet the twins. Unlike William's awkward first meeting with them, Eleanor seemed to know instinctively how to connect with children. "Hello, Emma and Ethan. I'm your grandmother, Eleanor." Emma studied her face carefully. "Another grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart, and I brought you something." Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out 2 small handmade stuffed animals. "I made these myself." The twins accepted the gifts with excitement while the adults watched. "You have to tell me everything," Eleanor said to James and Diane. "I want to know how you met, about your relationship, everything I've missed." Over dinner, they shared their story. Eleanor listened without judgment, occasionally glancing at William with what seemed like disappointment. "The Montgomerys are still causing problems?" she asked after hearing about the lawsuit and insurance cancellation. "Robert won't stop until he's destroyed us," James said. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "I might be able to help. I know someone, Barbara Chen, Marcus's mother. She's a mediator who specializes in high-profile disputes. She could reach out to the Montgomerys, perhaps find a resolution." "They won't listen," William said dismissively. "You'd be surprised what Barbara can accomplish," Eleanor replied. "She has a gift for finding common ground between enemies." The next day, Eleanor made the call to Barbara Chen. Meanwhile, James and Diane drove to Millfield to look at houses. The real estate agent showed them several properties before taking them to a modest 4-bedroom house on Maple Street. It had a large yard with old trees and a swing set. "It needs some work," the agent admitted, "but the structure is sound and it's within your budget." Diane walked through the empty rooms, imagining their life there. "The twins would share this room until they're older, and this could be your home office, James." "What do you think?" James asked, watching her reaction carefully. "I think it feels right," Diane said honestly. "Not too big, not too small. A place where we could be ourselves." They made an offer on the house that day. When they returned to William's estate, Eleanor was waiting with news. "Barbara made contact with Jessica Montgomery," she told them. "Surprisingly, Jessica agreed to meet with you both in New York next week. She's briefly returning from Paris." "Jessica wants to meet with us?" Diane asked in disbelief. "Barbara says Jessica seems different. Apparently she's met someone in Paris, a French businessman named Charles. She's engaged again." James looked stunned. That was fast. "Barbara thinks the lawsuit might be more Robert's crusade than Jessica's at this point," Eleanor explained. "This meeting could be very important." That evening, after the twins were asleep, Diane found James sitting on the patio, looking at the stars. "Our offer on the house was accepted," he told her as she sat beside him. "So we'll have a home of our own," Diane said, smiling. "A fresh start." "I talked to Marcus again today. He's excited about our business plan. He thinks we could really help people who normally can't access good financial advice. And I found 3 schools in Millfield looking for teaching assistants," Diane added. "I updated my resume and sent applications." James took her hand. "We're building something new together. Something honest." "Speaking of honesty," Diane said, "there's something I need to tell you. Before we left the hospital, I overheard 2 nurses talking. They recognized your name from the news. Word is getting around about us. Does that worry you?" "Not anymore," Diane said firmly. "I'm done hiding. Let people talk. We know the truth." The next weekend, they took the twins to a small community fair in Millfield. It was their first public outing as a family without hiding or worrying about photographers. To their surprise, no one stared or whispered as they walked through the fair. The twins rode a small carousel, and James bought cotton candy for everyone. "No one recognizes us here," James said, looking around. "We're just another family enjoying the fair." Diane smiled as she watched Emma and Ethan laugh on the carousel. This is what normal feels like. As they drove back to William's house, James's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unexpected name: Robert Montgomery. James stared at his phone for a long moment before answering. "Robert," he said, his voice steady. "This is unexpected." Don't think this is a friendly call. Robert Montgomery's cold voice came through the speaker. I'm calling to let you know your little house-hunting trip to Millfield won't solve anything. I have friends there too. How did you— I have eyes everywhere, Parker. You can't hide from me. James gripped the steering wheel tighter. I'm not hiding. We're trying to build a life. A life? Robert laughed without humor. I'm going to make sure you don't have a life to build. By the time I'm done, no bank will hire you. No school will accept your girlfriend. And those children will grow up knowing their father is a failure. The call ended abruptly. Diane looked at James with concern. What did he say? She asked quietly, glancing back to make sure the twins hadn't heard. He knows we were in Millfield today. He's threatening to follow us there. When they arrived back at William's house, they found Eleanor and William waiting for them with serious expressions. We need to talk, William said after the twins were settled with a movie in the playroom. In William's study, Eleanor spoke first. This can't continue. Robert's vendetta is getting out of hand. He just called James, Diane told them. He knows we were looking at houses in Millfield. Then it's time we fought back, Eleanor said firmly. Defensive moves aren't working. What are you suggesting? James asked. Tell your story. The real story, not the scandal version that's circulating in the media. Eleanor leaned forward. I have a contact at National View magazine. They'd love to publish your side of things. James shook his head. More publicity is the last thing we need. No, Diane said suddenly. Your mother is right. We've been letting Robert control the narrative. Maybe it's time people heard the truth. The next day, with Eleanor's guidance, James began writing his account of their relationship. He wrote about meeting Diane at a Montgomery family dinner 3 years ago, how she was the only person who seemed genuine in a room full of pretense. He described their friendship growing into love and his struggle between duty to his family and loyalty to his heart. Is this too personal? James asked Diane after showing her the draft. It's honest, she said. That's what matters. Eleanor helped edit the piece, making suggestions but keeping James's voice intact. When it was finished, she sent it to her contact at National View. They love it, she told them 2 days later. They want to publish it next week with the title, The Truth Behind the Truth Wedding. Is that wise? William asked. It could provoke Robert further. We can't live in fear of his reactions forever, James said. This is our chance to tell our side. The article was published online first, and within hours it had been shared thousands of times. Comments poured in, most of them supportive. Refreshing to see someone choose love over money in that world. Those children deserve parents who are true to themselves. The courage to walk away from a lie. Respect. Diane's phone buzzed constantly with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Even more surprisingly, she received emails from 3 different schools outside the Westfield area, offering her interviews for teaching positions. People are reaching out to us, Diane said, showing James the emails. The article is changing how they see us. Meanwhile, Barbara Chen called with news about the meeting with Jessica. She's willing to meet you both tomorrow at the Grant Hotel in New York City, Barbara said. Neutral territory. Her fiancé, Charles, will be there too. Why does she want to meet now? James asked suspiciously. She says she has something important to tell you. I believe she's sincere. The next day, James and Diane drove to New York City, leaving the twins with Eleanor and William. They arrived at the Grant Hotel 15 minutes early, nervously waiting in the upscale restaurant Barbara had chosen. There she is, James said quietly as Jessica entered with a tall, dark-haired man. Diane's stomach tightened. The last time she had seen Jessica was at the church, her face twisted with rage. But the woman approaching their table looked different, more relaxed, her smile genuine instead of practiced. James. Diane. Jessica nodded as she sat down. This is Charles Dubois. The Frenchmen shook their hands warmly. A pleasure to meet you both. An awkward silence followed until Barbara Chen, who had arranged the meeting, spoke up. "Thank you all for coming. Jessica, you had something you wanted to discuss?" Jessica took a deep breath. "I read your article, James. It was illuminating, different from my father's version of events." "What is your father's version?" Diane asked. "That you seduced James to gain access to Parker money, that you planned everything from the beginning." Jessica shook her head. "I believed him at first because it was easier than facing the truth." "Which is?" James prompted. "That our engagement was never about love. It was a business arrangement between our families." Jessica glanced at Charles, who nodded encouragingly. "Meeting Charles in Paris was like waking up. For the first time, I understood what real connection feels like." Charles took Jessica's hand. "We are truly happy together. Not because of our families or status, but because of who we are with each other." "I'm glad for you," James said sincerely, "but that doesn't explain why you wanted to meet." "The lawsuit," Jessica said directly. "It was my father's idea, not mine. I went along with it initially because I was hurt and angry. But now—" She pulled out a document from her purse. "This is a formal statement withdrawing my support for any legal action against you or Diane. I've already sent it to the lawyers." Diane stared at Jessica in disbelief. "Why now?" "Because holding on to anger was poisoning my chance at happiness," Jessica said simply. "And because those children deserve to grow up without this cloud hanging over them." After Jessica and Charles left, Barbara smiled at James and Diane. That went better than expected. "Will her statement really stop the lawsuit?" Diane asked. "It removes a key plaintiff, which significantly weakens Robert's case. He can still pursue it, but it won't be easy." On the drive home, James called his father with the news. William was pleased but cautious. "Robert won't give up easily," he warned, "but this is definitely a step in the right direction." When they arrived back at William's estate, they found him planning something in the dining room with the housekeeper. "What's all this?" James asked, looking at the papers spread across the table. "Invitation list," William explained. "I'm hosting a dinner party next Saturday. I want to introduce my grandchildren and Diane to my friends properly." "A dinner party?" Diane repeated nervously. "With your social circle?" William nodded. It's time they met the real Diane Johnson, not the character from the gossip columns. The night of the dinner party arrived quickly. Diane wore a simple but elegant dress that Eleanor had helped her choose. The twins were dressed in matching outfits, excited about the special occasion. "Remember," James whispered to Diane as the first guests arrived, "you belong here just as much as anyone." William greeted each guest personally, then proudly introduced them to Diane and the twins. To Diane's surprise, many of William's friends were warm and welcoming. "I read your son's article," one woman told William. "Quite moving. Reminds me of when my daughter eloped with her college professor. Best decision she ever made, though we were furious at the time." During dinner, several of William's business associates expressed interest in James's new financial advisory concept. "Helping working families plan for the future? That's something I could get behind," said George Harrington, a respected investment banker. "Let me know when you're ready to launch. I have clients who might benefit." By the end of the evening, Diane felt a new sense of confidence. These people, William's peers, had accepted her. Not all of them, certainly, but enough to matter. As the last guests were leaving, James's phone rang again. It was Robert Montgomery's number. This time, instead of hesitating, James answered immediately. His voice was firm, no longer defensive. "Hello, Robert. I think it's time we talked. Really talked. We need to meet face to face." Robert's voice sounded strained through the phone. "My office. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning." "Why should I come to you?" James asked. "Because I'm offering you a chance to end this. One meeting, just you and me." After the call ended, Diane shook her head. "It's a trap. He wants to get you alone to threaten you more directly." "Maybe," James admitted, but if there's any chance to resolve this, I need to try." "Then I'm coming with you," Diane insisted. "He specifically said just me. If I bring you, he might refuse to talk." William, who had been listening, spoke up. "Let James handle this, Diane, but I'll be ready to step in if needed." The next morning, James drove to the Montgomery Technologies headquarters in downtown Westfield. The sleek glass tower reflected the morning sun as he entered the lobby. "Mr. Parker for Robert Montgomery," he told the receptionist. "Mr. Montgomery is expecting you," she replied, her eyes widening with recognition. "Top floor. His assistant will meet you at the elevator." The elevator ride to the 30th floor gave James time to collect his thoughts. When the doors opened, a stern-faced woman led him through a series of impressive offices to a large corner room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Robert Montgomery stood looking out at the city, his back to the door. He didn't turn when James entered. "You've caused quite a disruption to my family, Parker," Robert said, still facing the window. "That wasn't my intention." Robert turned around, his face hard. "Intentions don't matter. Results do. And the result is my daughter was humiliated in front of everyone who matters in this town." "Jessica seems to have moved on quite happily," James pointed out. Robert gestured for James to sit. "I'll be direct. I'm willing to drop the lawsuit under certain conditions." "What conditions?" "You and your family leave Connecticut. Sign a non-disclosure agreement never to discuss the Montgomerys publicly again. In return, I'll stop blocking your business ventures." James laughed without humor. "You think you can just banish us?" "This isn't the Middle Ages, Robert. Don't be naive. My influence extends far beyond Westfield. The Montgomery name opens doors, or closes them." "We're not leaving," James said firmly. "We've done nothing wrong." Robert slammed his hand on the desk. "Nothing wrong? You carried on with our household manager for years while engaged to my daughter. An engagement I never wanted. That was arranged between our families for business purposes. Jessica knew that. She never loved me either. That's irrelevant. What matters is how it looks." James stood up, matching Robert's intensity. "That's always been your problem. You care more about appearances than reality, more about what people think than what's actually true." As their argument escalated, Robert's face grew increasingly red. "You have no idea what this has cost me. My reputation, my standing in the community." "What about what it's cost your daughter? Have you even asked Jessica if she's happy now?" Robert's expression changed suddenly, vulnerability breaking through his anger. "She called me from Paris last week. Do you know what she said? She said she's happier now than she ever was planning that wedding, that she's grateful it fell apart." James softened his tone. "Isn't your daughter's happiness what matters most?" "Don't pretend to know what matters to me," Robert snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. Meanwhile, at William's estate, Diane was playing with the twins in the garden when the security guard approached. "Miss Johnson, there's a visitor at the gate, Mrs. Martha Montgomery." Diane froze. "Martha Montgomery? Here? She insists on speaking with you. Should I turn her away?" Diane thought for a moment. "No. Let her in, but stay nearby, please." Minutes later, Martha Montgomery walked across the lawn, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit. Her eyes immediately went to Emma and Ethan playing with their toys. "Mrs. Montgomery," Diane said, standing to greet her, "this is unexpected." "Believe me, this isn't how I expected to spend my morning either," Martha replied coldly. "I came to see the woman who destroyed my family's plans." "I didn't set out to destroy anything," Diane said calmly. "Would you like to sit down?" Martha reluctantly took a seat on the patio, her posture rigid. "My husband is meeting with James right now." "I know. He thinks he can solve everything with threats and money. Typical Robert." Diane watched Martha carefully. The woman seemed tired beneath her perfect exterior. "Why are you really here, Mrs. Montgomery?" Martha's eyes returned to the twins. "I wanted to see them. The children who derailed everything. Emma, curious about the new visitor, approached them. "Hello, I'm Emma. I'm 4 years old." Martha seemed startled by the direct greeting. "Hello, Emma? Do you want to see my drawing?" Emma asked, holding up a colorful picture. Before Martha could respond, Emma placed the drawing in her lap and ran back to play with her brother. Martha stared at the childish drawing of a family, 2 children, a woman, and a man, all holding hands and smiling. "They seem happy," Martha observed, her voice softer. "They are," Diane confirmed. "They know they're loved." "Jessica was never like that as a child," Martha said suddenly. "She was always trying to please us, to be perfect. I can't remember her ever being carefree." Back at Montgomery Technologies, the confrontation between James and Robert continued. "Those children deserve to grow up without this constant fighting," James said. "Whatever issues you have with me, don't take it out on them." "Don't lecture me about children," Robert replied. "I provided everything for Jessica, except freedom to choose her own life." Robert was about to respond when his assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, William Parker is here. He's quite insistent." Robert looked surprised. "Send him in." William entered the room with confidence, nodding to James. "This is a private meeting, William," Robert said coldly. "Not anymore," William replied, pulling out his phone. "I have someone who wants to join our conversation." He set the phone on the desk and started a video call. Jessica's face appeared on the screen. "Daddy? Are you there?" Jessica asked. Robert's expression softened instantly. "Jessica, how's Paris?" "It's wonderful. Charles and I are very happy." Jessica looked serious. "But I'm calling because I heard you're still pursuing this vendetta against James and Diane." "I'm protecting our family name," Robert insisted. "No, you're protecting your pride," Jessica countered. "I've moved on. I've found real happiness with Charles. Why can't you let James and Diane find theirs?" "They humiliated you." "No, they didn't," Jessica interrupted. "I did that to myself when I tried to expose them at the wedding. I was hurt and angry, but now I see it differently. If the wedding had gone forward, none of us would be happy now." William spoke up. "Robert, this feud is hurting both our families and our businesses. The market is noticing. Parker Banking Group's stock dropped 15 points last week. I'm sure Montgomery Technologies is feeling similar effects." Robert looked from William to Jessica's face on the screen. For the first time, James saw uncertainty in the man's expression. "Daddy," Jessica said gently, "let it go. For me, I'm rebuilding my life in a way that feels true to who I am. Let James and Diane do the same." At William's estate, Martha stood to leave after an hour of surprisingly civil conversation. "Your children are lovely," she said to Diane. "I can see why James—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Thank you for coming," Diane said sincerely. "I hope someday we can move past all this." Martha nodded stiffly. As she turned to go, she paused. "Take care of those children. They have something Jessica never did." "What's that?" "Parents who see them as they are, not as reflections of themselves." After Martha left, Diane received a text from James. "Meeting over. Robert is backing down. Coming home now." When James returned, he found Diane waiting anxiously. "What happened?" she asked. William showed up with Jessica on video call. She told Robert to end the vendetta, that she's happier now in Paris than she ever was here. "Do you believe he'll actually stop?" James nodded. "I saw something change in him when Jessica spoke." Plus, William pointed out how the feud is hurting both families' businesses. Robert's a businessman above all else. "Martha came here," Diane said, surprising James. "Martha Montgomery? Here? Why?" "I think she wanted to see who we really were. By the end, she seemed almost human." That evening, they gathered in William's living room to discuss next steps. The twins played quietly nearby, tired from the day's excitement. "The closing on your new house is next week," William reminded them. Eleanor nodded approvingly. "A fresh start is exactly what you need." "I spoke with Marcus today," James added. "We're setting up our financial advisory firm. The paperwork is already filed." Diane smiled. "And I have an interview at Millfield Elementary School on Monday for a teaching assistant position." "Things are finally coming together," James said, taking Diane's hand. William raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings." As they clinked glasses, James's phone chimed with an email notification. He checked it, and his expression changed to one of surprise. "What is it?" Diane asked. "It's from Robert Montgomery. Subject line, Proposal for Cooperation." James opened the email with caution, reading it aloud to the others. "Mr. Parker, our conversation today has given me much to consider. My daughter's happiness is indeed my priority, and she seems genuinely content with her new path in life. While I cannot pretend to approve of how matters unfolded, I recognize that continuing this conflict serves no one's interests. I propose we meet next week to discuss a potential educational initiative for underprivileged children that could benefit from both our families' involvement. Regards, Robert Montgomery." The room fell silent. Eleanor was the first to speak. "Educational initiative? That's unexpected." William looked skeptical. "It could be a peace offering, or another trap." "I don't think it's a trap," James said, rereading the email. "Something changed in him today when he spoke with Jessica. I think he's trying to find a way forward without losing face." 1 week later, James and Diane officially closed on their new house in Millfield. It was a modest 4-bedroom home near a small lake, with a large yard perfect for the twins to play in. As they signed the final papers at the real estate office, Diane squeezed James's hand. "It's ours," she whispered, "our first real home together." The real estate agent handed them the keys with a smile. "Congratulations! You'll love the neighborhood. Very family-friendly." That afternoon, as they showed the twins their new rooms, Diane's phone rang. It was the principal from Millfield Elementary School. "Miss Johnson, I'm pleased to inform you that we'd like to offer you the kindergarten teaching position." "Kindergarten teacher, but I applied for the teaching assistant role," Diane said in surprise. "Your qualifications and interview were impressive. We think you'd be perfect as a lead teacher. Would you like some time to consider the offer?" "No, I accept. Thank you so much." When she hung up, Diane rushed to find James, who was measuring windows in the living room for curtains. "I got a job at Millfield Elementary, not as an assistant, as a full kindergarten teacher." James hugged her tightly. "That's amazing. I knew they'd recognize how qualified you are. It feels like everything is finally falling into place," Diane said. 2 weeks after moving into their new home, James and Marcus officially opened their financial advisory firm, Parker Chen Financial Planning. Their office was in a small building in downtown Millfield with a simple sign on the door. On their first day of business, James was stunned to find a line of people waiting outside when they arrived. "What's happening?" he asked Marcus as they approached. "Did you run a promotion I don't know about?" A middle-aged woman stepped forward from the line. "Are you James Parker? We read about you in National View magazine. You said your new business would help regular families plan for the future. We could use that kind of help." Throughout the day, James and Marcus met with clients from all walks of life: factory workers, teachers, nurses, and small business owners. "This is exactly what I wanted to do," James told Marcus during a brief break. "Real help for real people." That evening at home, as they ate dinner on their new patio, Diane shared stories from her school preparation day. "The other teachers were so welcoming," she said, "and the classroom is perfect, sunny with lots of space for activities. School starts in 2 weeks, and I can't wait." "Mom, Dad, look!" Emma called from the yard, where she and Ethan were chasing fireflies in the twilight. James glanced at Diane. Did she just call me Dad? She did, Diane said softly. They both started doing it this week. I think having our own home made it feel more real to them. The next weekend, William and Eleanor came to visit, bringing housewarming gifts. The house is charming, Eleanor said sincerely as Diane showed her around. It feels like a real home. William looked slightly uncomfortable in the modest surroundings but made an effort to be positive. The yard is excellent for the children. Good investment. It's not an investment, Dad, James corrected gently. It's our home. Later, while the twins showed Eleanor their new swing set, William pulled James aside. Have you met with Robert Montgomery about his proposal? We're meeting tomorrow, James confirmed. Diane is coming too. He specifically requested her presence. Be careful, William warned. Robert doesn't change overnight. The following day, James and Diane drove to a restaurant halfway between Millfield and Westfield. Robert had chosen the neutral location for their meeting. They found him already seated at a corner table looking through some papers. Thank you for coming, Robert said formally as they sat down. Your email mentioned an educational initiative? James prompted after they ordered coffee. Robert nodded. After our last conversation, I've been reflecting on priorities. The importance of children having opportunities. He glanced at Diane. All children, regardless of their background. He pushed a folder across the table. Inside were plans for a foundation that would provide scholarships and support for single parents pursuing education or career advancement. I'd like to establish this foundation, Robert explained, with your input and involvement. Diane looked through the materials with growing interest. This could help so many families. Why now? James asked directly. Why this sudden interest? Robert was quiet for a moment before answering. Last week I had chest pains. Minor, but enough to send me to the hospital for tests. He tapped the folder. Nothing makes you reconsider your life choices like thinking you might not have much life left. I'm sorry to hear that, Diane said sincerely. Are you okay? Just high blood pressure and stress. The doctor ordered me to make lifestyle changes. Robert looked uncomfortable with the personal turn in conversation. The point is, I realized I've spent decades chasing status and power. What's the purpose, if not to create something meaningful? And you want our help with this foundation? James asked. I'd like to name it after Emma and Ethan, Robert said, surprising them both. The Parker Twins Foundation for Family Support. On the drive home, Diane was thoughtful. Do you think he's genuine? She asked James. I think his health scare genuinely frightened him. Whether that change of heart lasts remains to be seen. As summer turned to fall, their new life in Millfield developed a comfortable rhythm. Diane's kindergarten class quickly became known for its nurturing environment and creative approach. James and Marcus's firm grew steadily, with clients referring friends and family. The story of the truth wedding, as people now called it, continued to have unexpected effects in Westfield. 3 prominent couples announced separations in the months following, each citing a desire for more authentic relationships. One evening in October, James returned home from work to find Diane sitting on the dock by the lake, watching the sunset. Peaceful out here, he said, sitting beside her. I was just thinking about how much has changed in 1 year, Diane replied. Last October, I was still sneaking around, living a half-life. Now everything is out in the open. Speaking of changes, James began, I got a call from Jessica today. Jessica? What did she want? She's coming back next week for her father's 60th birthday. She wanted to let us know directly in case we heard from other sources. That was thoughtful of her. She also mentioned that she and Charles are expecting a baby in the spring. Diane smiled. I'm happy for her. She seems to have found her way. The twins' 4th birthday arrived in early November. They decided to have a small party at their lakeside home, inviting the twins' new friends from preschool, and surprisingly, both the Parker and Montgomery families. Eleanor arrived first, bringing handmade sweaters for the children. William came with enormous wrapped gifts. The real shock came when Robert and Martha Montgomery's car pulled into the driveway. "Are you sure about this?" Diane whispered to James as they watched the Montgomerys approach. "They RSVP'd, yes. I guess we'll find out." Robert looked uncomfortable but determined as he handed each twin a gift bag. "Happy birthday, Emma and Ethan." The children thanked him politely, then ran off to play with their friends. Martha seemed more at ease than her husband. "The house is lovely," she told Diane. "Very warm." The adults maintained a strained but civil conversation throughout the party. When cake time came, everyone sang "Happy Birthday" together. Parkers and Montgomerys united by the two children blowing out their candles. After the other guests left, Robert approached James and Diane on the patio. "I wanted to let you know the foundation is officially established. The first scholarships will be awarded in January." "That's wonderful news," Diane said. "Will you send us the application information? I know several parents at my school who could benefit." "Of course." Robert hesitated, then added, "Jessica said you were kind to her when she visited last month. Thank you for that." As the Montgomerys prepared to leave, Ethan ran up to Robert and tugged on his sleeve. "Thank you for my dinosaur," he said, holding up the toy from the gift bag. Robert knelt down, wincing slightly at the effort. "You're welcome, young man." "Do you like dinosaurs?" "They're my favorite." A hint of a genuine smile crossed Robert's face. "Mine too, when I was your age." That night, after the twins were asleep, James found Diane looking at property listings on her laptop. "Shopping for a new house already?" he teased. "Just looking at the vacant lot next door," Diane explained. "It would be perfect for a garden next spring." James sat beside her. "I was thinking about spring, too. It would be a nice time for a wedding." Diane looked up in surprise. "A wedding?" "Our wedding," James clarified, taking her hand. "Nothing elaborate, just family and close friends, here, by the lake." "That sounds perfect," Diane said, smiling. "A simple ceremony focused on what matters." "Which is?" James asked, pulling her close. "The truth of who we are together, not what others expect us to be." Spring arrived with warm breezes and colorful flowers blooming around the lakeside house. In the 6 months since James proposed, Diane had planned a simple wedding that reflected who they truly were as a family. "Mom, can I practice walking again?" Emma asked, clutching a small basket of flower petals. "Of course, sweetie." Diane watched as her daughter carefully walked down the makeshift aisle they had created on their lawn, sprinkling petals with great concentration. Ethan ran up behind his sister. "My turn! I need to practice with the rings." James emerged from the house carrying 2 garland strings. The decorations arrived. "Nothing fancy, just like we wanted." "Perfect," Diane said, looking around their yard. "I can't believe we're getting married tomorrow." 1 year since the wedding that wasn't, James noted, and now we're having the wedding that should have been. The day before their wedding, James's financial advisory firm had received national recognition in Business Week magazine. The article praised the innovative approach Parker Chen Financial Planning took in helping working-class families build security. "Did you see that 3 of our clients were quoted in the article?" Marcus had said during their celebration at the office. Mrs. and Peterson talking about finally being able to afford college for her daughter made me tear up. Diane had her own professional success to celebrate. Her kindergarten class had the highest parent satisfaction ratings in Millfield Elementary's history. "You connect with the children in a way I've never seen," the principal told her during her evaluation meeting. "Parents are already requesting you for next year." As they finished setting up chairs on the lawn, William arrived carrying more decorations. "I thought you might need extra lanterns for the evening," he said. "The forecast says it will be a clear night." In the past year, William had fully embraced his role as grandfather, often driving to Millfield to take the twins fishing or to the local ice cream shop. His relationship with James had deepened as well, evolving from formal expectations to genuine appreciation. "Dad, you didn't need to bring more supplies," James said. "We have everything under control." "I know," William admitted. "I just wanted to help. First wedding I've actually been excited about." Emma ran to her grandfather, hugging his legs. "Grandpa Will, want to see my flower girl dress?" "I certainly do, Princess," William said, taking her hand. "Lead the way." Diane smiled as she watched them go inside. "He's changed so much." "We all have," James replied. Eleanor arrived later that afternoon with homemade cookies for the twins and a special gift for Diane. "This was my grandmother's," she said, handing Diane a small blue hairpin. "I thought you might want something borrowed and blue for tomorrow." "It's beautiful," Diane said, touched by the gesture. "Thank you." By evening, most of the preparations were complete. The yard was transformed with simple white chairs facing the lake, where an arch covered with flowers marked the spot where they would exchange vows. String lights hung from the trees, and tables were set up on the patio for the small reception. As the twins fell asleep, exhausted from the excitement, Diane received an unexpected text message from Jessica Montgomery. "Just landed in New York. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." Strange how life works out, isn't it? "Jessica is coming to our wedding," Diane told James, showing him the message. "She RSVP'd yes, but I wasn't sure she'd actually come," James admitted. "Robert confirmed last week that he and Martha would attend. The Montgomerys and Parkers together again, but on much better terms this time." The morning of the wedding dawned sunny and warm. Diane's sister Linda helped her get ready in the master bedroom while the twins bounced with excitement in their formal clothes. "Stop jumping, Ethan, or you'll wrinkle your suit," Linda laughed, trying to straighten his little tie. "But I'm too excited to stand still," Ethan protested. Diane looked at herself in the mirror. Her dress was simple but elegant, an ivory sheath that made her feel beautiful without being extravagant. "You look perfect," Linda said, adjusting the blue hairpin in Diane's hair. "How do you feel?" "Happy," Diane said simply. "No nerves, no doubts. Just happy." Outside, guests began to arrive. James greeted them in the yard, looking handsome in his navy suit. William helped direct people to their seats, while Eleanor arranged final touches on the flower arrangements. Then the Montgomerys arrived. Robert looked more relaxed than James had ever seen him, wearing a light gray suit rather than his usual dark formal wear. Martha smiled genuinely as she greeted the other guests. Jessica and Charles walked behind them, Jessica's pregnancy now visible in her flowing dress. "Welcome," James said, shaking Robert's hand. "Thank you for coming." "Wouldn't miss it," Robert replied with unexpected warmth. "The foundation has approved its first 12 scholarship recipients, by the way. Several were from Diane's school recommendations." "That's wonderful news." Jessica approached, her husband Charles beside her. "The setting is beautiful, James. So peaceful here." "How are you feeling?" James asked, nodding toward her pregnancy. "Wonderful, actually. We found out it's a boy." Jessica smiled. "Charles wants to name him Philippe, after his grandfather." At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the small ceremony began. A string quartet played softly as the 30 guests took their seats facing the lake. James stood beneath the flower arch with his friend Marcus beside him as best man. Ethan walked down the aisle first, concentrating hard on the small pillow holding the rings. Emma followed, scattering flower petals with dramatic flair. The guests laughed softly at her enthusiasm. Then Linda began her walk as maid of honor. When she reached the front, the music changed and everyone stood. Diane appeared at the back of the aisle with William beside her. In the past year, he had become like a father to her, and she had asked him to walk her down the aisle. The twins waved excitedly from the front as their mother approached. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the officiant asked when they reached the arch. "I do," William said, his voice thick with emotion. He placed Diane's hand in James's and stepped back to join Eleanor in the front row. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. James and Diane had written their own vows, speaking from the heart about their journey together. 3 years ago, I met someone who saw me, not my family name or bank account, James said. You showed me what it meant to live truthfully, Diane, even when that truth was difficult. I promise to stand beside you in that truth for the rest of our lives. Diane wiped away a tear before speaking. James, you came into my life when I least expected it. Through all the challenges, your love for me and our children never wavered. I promise to build our future together as equal partners, with honesty and love as our foundation. After they exchanged rings, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Their kiss was met with applause and cheers from the twins who rushed forward to hug their parents. During the reception, guests mingled on the patio. The atmosphere was relaxed and joyful, so different from the tense social gatherings of their past. William tapped a glass for attention and offered a toast. To James and Diane, thank you for teaching this old man that true worth isn't measured by social standing or bank accounts, but by the courage to live authentically. Later, as the afternoon sun began to lower over the lake, Diane found a quiet moment with Jessica. Your home is lovely, Jessica said, sitting beside Diane on a garden bench. It suits you. Thank you. How long are you staying in the States? 2 weeks. Daddy's birthday is next weekend, then back to Paris before the baby comes. Jessica placed a hand on her stomach. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for what happened at our wedding last year. Really? Jessica nodded. If we had gotten married, I would never have moved to Paris, never met Charles, never found out what it feels like to make my own choices. I'm happy for you, Diane said sincerely. I'm happy for us both, Jessica replied. We're living the lives we were meant to have, not the ones planned for us. As evening approached, the photographer gathered everyone for a final group photo. The Parkers and Montgomerys stood together around James, Diane, and the twins. 2 families now connected through the children who had brought them together. Robert's health had improved with his lifestyle changes, and he stood proudly next to Martha. William had his arm around Eleanor, their past differences set aside. Jessica and Charles stood with the other guests, all smiling as the photographer counted down. Perfect, the photographer said after taking several shots. A beautiful family picture. As the guests departed with well wishes, James and Diane stood on their dock watching the sunset over the lake. The twins played nearby, chasing fireflies that had begun to appear in the twilight. We did it, Diane said, leaning against her husband's shoulder. Did what? James asked. Created something real from all that chaos. Look around us. Our home, our children, our work. Everything built on truth instead of expectations. James wrapped his arm around her waist. The truth didn't just set us free. It gave us the family we never knew we needed. As darkness fell, the stars reflected on the lake's surface. Behind them, their home glowed with warm light, a beacon of the life they had built together. Not perfect, but perfectly their own. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.